the third day, including the serious game part, of GCAP 2011. We have a fantastically relative talk to a lot of developers in Australia and Melbourne at the moment, and also basically anyone who wants to get an insight into this fantastic company, Tin Man Games. So on my left we have Neil Rennison of Tin Man Games, and on my right we have Ben Britton. Everyone, if you have... I waited, but I didn't want to leave the awkward silence too long. If you have phones, put them to silent, and without further ado, here's our presenters.
We're up. Hello. Thanks for coming to see us. So today we're going to talk to you about building a brand from scratch. So we're talking about mainly about Gamebook Adventures, which is our kind of choose your own adventure stroke RPG interactive game books which are around on iOS at the moment. So this is us. I always pull that face apparently, especially when I'm drunk, according to Giselle. So look, I just want to give you a little bit of background very briefly, because we'll sort of fill in as we go along. But as you can tell, I'm not native from around these parts. So I came to Australia about 3.5 years ago, and I had a bit of money behind me because I was doing some 3D outsourcing stuff, working with people like EA and stuff like that. So I wanted to start my own indie, and so basically used that cash and started a company here. I came out to GCAP actually in 2007, which was held across the river in the exhibition centre. And I saw talks by Film Victoria and people like that, and I thought, hey, Melbourne's a place I want to come to start my company, because I think it's an awesome area of Australia to kind of get support and funding.
So my story is a bit different, but similar. That I came here 5 or 6 years ago to be with my then not wife, now wife. But this is sort of the history part of the talk, where we talk about all the mistakes we made and how we learned from them. So this is sort of a slide I use a lot, and I got the idea from Simon from the Voxel, so thanks Voxel. This is the holy trinity of game creation, the idea that if you have good art, good code, and good design, you put them together, you make a great game. If you have those things, if you build a fun game with those 3 core elements, people will buy it and it'll be a success, and that's great. The problem with that is it's kind of bullshit. And so, but 3 years ago, where our story begins, both Neil and I were sort of in that same space where, like, I want to be in the games industry. I came from the film industry, so I was sort of moving laterally, and I want to make some great games. So what I did was I was consulting and working with lots of other people and building lots of great games, all of which were fun. Like, the games tested well with people we gave them to, and they were fun games, and they were good games, and some of them had good art. This is a really bad logo icon, big one. But the idea was that all the games I made back then were fun and compelling games, but none of them succeeded. And I was trying to figure out why that was. I was sort of in this place where I was trying to figure out, like, okay, so why didn't my game succeed? I had the holy trinity, but that wasn't enough, so what the heck? So, and then...
Yeah, so I kind of was doing a similar thing. I kind of got my money in the bank account and thought, hey, let's create some cool game ideas. And actually, me and a guy called Matt Lacey, who's sitting in the front, we created this little game called Fruit Trees, which is basically you pick fruit off the tree and you get scores and multipliers and stuff. And it was at that time where the iOS was like the gold rush, so everybody was going to it and you were like, yeah, I'm going to make this game, it's going to put it out for $1, I'm going to sell 1 million copies, woo! The Ferrari garage down the road, I'm going to go down there and order the grey one. And yeah, and it didn't kind of work like that. And I think, I can't remember the exact numbers, but I think we spent probably about $10,000 on it, and I think it's probably yet to make over $1,500. Like, I mean, it's going to take a long time to break even on that game. So very quickly, we failed, and I needed to come up with a way to get around that.
So we're both in this sort of failure space, which I'm a big believer in failing as fast as you can, as quick as you can. We both came to this idea that the holy trinity, having good code, art, design was enough, and we had to have more. And so this is sort of the graph of what I sort of see you need to have to be a fairly successful company. The important bits, of course, the things that we all love here, code, art, design, just turns out they are important. You have to have a game, but that's not the whole story. Marketing is so important. And when I say marketing, a lot of people have this like horrible connotation that that's something that you do to force people to buy things they don't want. But in reality, marketing is the whole spectrum. You start your marketing before you even make your game, before you put down one piece of code or one line in your design document. You have to understand your market, understand who you're making a game for, and what you're making. That's also marketing. Marketing happens for the entire thing. Marketing informs every piece of your design, your code, and your art. And some people hate to hear that because it sounds like, because we have this horrible connotation with marketing. Marketing is this bad, horrible thing that
It's
marketing
such a sellout.
Yeah, you're a sellout, you're marketing, but marketing is, I mean, maybe there's a better word for it, and I think we're going to start using brand as a better word for it. But the idea is, if you understand your market, you understand your users, and you use that knowledge to build a game for them, your game will be way better than if you just make a game and then try to sell it to them.
Okay, so we failed, right? So we needed to find a way where we didn't fail and we could succeed. So the next trick was actually sitting down and going, okay, so what do we need to do to make a successful game? And I think if you've just been listening to Jesse this morning, one of the important things of that was actually you need to create a brand, because you know, we don't want to just release one game and then sort of like see if it does well. We need to release something that has a sustainable future that can actually, you know, still be making me money in 10 years' time somehow. So this is kind of a graph of conclusions. So if you look at the top left circle, it's games that would be totally awesome. So this is, you know, something that you think would be great. Games that are possible for me to make. So something that's within budget. So I don't want to be making the next MMO. I don't want to be making the next FPS with, you know, ultra awesome water and all that kind of stuff. And also something that's marketable, something that I can actually market and you know, take and put in front of consumers to get them interested in buying my product, because I just want to make money at the end of the day to be able to continue what I'm doing. So, Gamebook Adventures. So taking those points, this is kind of how all the conclusions I came to. So in the top left hand corner, I was looking at the different games that I used to like when I was a kid. And one of the things I used to love doing when I was 10 years old was reading choose your own adventure books and fighting fantasy books. I also, at the time, well, obviously the gold rush of the iPhone had just kind of sort of peaked and gone down, but the iPhone was now the ideal platform for you know, an interactive ebook. And then, unbeknownst to me at that particular point in time when I came up with the idea for Gamebook Adventures, the iPad was on the horizon. I didn't actually know that existed, and when that got announced, it was kind of like, you know, wow, this is amazing, because, you know, the iPad is the perfect interactive ebook experience you could ever possibly have. And so the other thing is, with the marketing, I was looking around the App Store, and there really wasn't anybody doing any kind of interactive narrative stuff. There was a few companies doing stuff. I think even Choose Your Own Adventure had published an app, which we checked out, and it wasn't great. It wasn't like they'd put a lot of time and effort into it. And funny about that, at the time, because I used to read fighting fantasy books, and fighting fantasy books weren't on the App Store, and then about 2 months into development, I heard an interview with Ian Livingston, who was up at a conference in Scotland, and somebody in the audience just happened to ask him, hey, why don't you bring fighting fantasy books back to bring them out for iPhones? And he said, oh, we've just signed a company in Canada to do that for us, and I just sat there and my whole world caved in. But it didn't turn out so badly.
We have more slides on it.
Yeah. So this is basically what we're after. You know, taking what is an old paperback Choose Your Own Adventure style book and bringing it to a digital platform. So there might be a few of you in here that actually don't know what a game book is. You know, there's probably a few of you that are too young when they were around in the shops. So basically the one that everybody knows, and the ones that are most known around the world, are the Choose Your Own Adventure series, which were massive. I looked up on Wikipedia last night just to get some stats for here. In the 80s and 90s, they sold 250 million of these things. So I think it's safe to say there's a market for this stuff, right? I think we're on a good track. So, and the books that really got me started off on this road were Fighting Fantasy, which were really big in the UK. They were kind of big over here as well. And they were started by two guys, Ian Livingston and Steve Jackson, who were the co-founders of Games Workshop. And Ian Livingston now is like the voice of the UK games industry. So they started this off, and they started publishing these game books. So it was kind of like Choose Your Own Adventure, but with sort of D&D elements thrown in, so dice rolling and battling monsters and various things. So, and then what followed on from there was that you had lots of little other spin-offs from that. So, two guys, Joe Deaver and Gary Chalk, they were, I believe they were both working for Games Workshop at the time, and they wanted to do their own fighting fantasy type series, and so created Lone Wolf, and Lone Wolf has actually gone on to become as notable as fighting fantasy, mainly because it was very different than fighting fantasy in that you could actually continue your character through all the different books. And they're held in quite high regard by kind of gamebook fans. And just a little side note on Gary Chalk just there. Gary Chalk is actually working with us on a gamebook next year. He's going to be doing the illustrations. So that's kind of cool.
So we had this product. We decided we're going to make gamebooks, right? Actually, Neil decided that came later. But we had this thing to make, and right from the very beginning, we knew that making a Gamebook Adventure on the iPhone is not going to be a huge, massive, giant, million-person hit. We're going to need more and more and more. So from the very beginning, we knew we had to build the brand up. And this is sort of the same chart I had before, but now with this brand circle around the whole thing, because every single thing you do affects your brand. It affects either a good way or a bad way of your brand. So your marketing, your code, your art design, all the choices you make, even like how you deal with your clients and your lawyer, how the lawyer deals with their lawyer, like all that stuff affects your brand. So it's important to sort of figure out what your brand is early on and make sure that everything you're doing is building that brand up and doing better. I mean, obviously, like sort of what Jesse was saying in the keynote was like, quality, 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 and that's sort of like everybody wants to have a quality brand. So it's not just about quality; it's about what other pieces of your brand matter, and how do you sort of present those to your players. We're talking about that some more as well.
So yeah, going back to a brand. So we weren't just going to. We could have just taken a choose your own adventure style book, put it in like a Kindle book reading format, and just put it up on the App Store and go, yeah, there you go. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to actually do something more than that, because I thought it was very important that our customers felt that they were part of this kind of unique kind of experience, because interactive game books hadn't been seen on mobile and later tablet devices before, and so I thought, it's like what Jesse said. We came in quite early, and I wanted us to be the premier title on there. It was really important. So I had to find out what the essence of a digital game book was. So this is a screenshot from one of our game books. So the immediate thing that I wanted to do was keep the book feel. So again, funnily enough, the fighting fantasy books that came out on the iPhone, it was funny to see when I bought them that you read their books by scrolling up. So you read from top to bottom. So it's like a big sort of piece of parchment paper. And to me, when I read the fighting fantasy books as a kid, I can't remember reading them on a scroll of piece of paper like that. And so I thought, I actually want to keep it as a book. I actually want it to look like a book. I want the pages to turn like a book. I actually want you to feel like you've got a book in your hand. And there are other choices as well. So I wanted to keep the classic look. So in the 80s, when they were printing these books, all the illustrations were done in black and white to save on costs, because they couldn't afford all the printing. So one of the things I decided earlier on was kind of a pretty big decision actually, and it's a decision that's actually changed, which we'll go into a bit later. But I wanted all the illustrations to be black and white, and that was really important. And other things in there as well, like if you look just on the right hand side here, there's this little skull, and it's like, what's that little skull mean? Well, in the old fighting fantasy books, because of printing limitations, what they used to do, they used to lay out the books, and when they had a gap, because they never wanted a section to go across 2 pages, so if they had a gap, they would fill it with like a little illustration of a skull with a knife through it, or a snake wrapped around a crown or something. And so those dividers, and they repeated through the book, so they were just there just to fill up the space. Like, we're on a digital platform, we don't have that worry. We don't need to worry about that anymore. But I thought, yes we do, because that's, to me, when I was 10 years old reading these things, that's what felt like a game book to me. So we have actually hard engineered putting the dividers back into the book to make them feel like an old book, when actually we don't really need them at all. And this is that weird slide with the title that confuses me.
Read the title.
And another thing with the Fighting Fantasy books, and if you've played D&D as well, everybody loves a good character sheet. You identify it's yours, it's your character sheet, you take it along to your D&D session every week and you scribble on it, and it's your thing, and we wanted to make sure you had that too. So our character sheet, we could have just had a little menu pop up with your stats in it, like a role-playing game, but I thought, no, I want that character sheet to appear, I want it to be up on the screen, I want you to have some ownership of it, I want all the stats written on. Simple things like making the fonts look like they're handwritten. You know, small things, but just things that, you know, just makes you feel like, well, makes me feel like I'm 10 years old again. The other issue here was, and this is an issue that we faced, when we first released Gamebook Adventures, we made it too hard, and we had a lot of people, this is where we didn't really do our market research very well, because we had a lot of people come to us saying, this is really hard, I really want to read your book, but I keep dying on page so-and-so, the giant rat keeps diving at my neck and blood everywhere, and I'm just disappointed I'm not buying your products anymore. And I suddenly realised actually people with mobile phones, a lot of our people, like most of the market, actually, A, they're not going to have read these game books before, and B, they're on their tram journey on the way to work. They've got 10 minutes to fill up their time. They don't want to, you know, they're looking at their iPhone because they don't want to look at other people. And they want something fun, they need something casual. So basically what we did is we had to implement difficulty levels to sort of engage the players that actually didn't want all the complex sort of like, you know, difficulty and stat stuff. So we had, basically what we have is we have bookmarks in our book. So they're like save points. So when you use a bookmark appears and it means you can go back to that page.
They're like the bookmarks on your chair.
Yeah. If you sat at the back, you won't have got a bookmark, and there's a few spare down the front if you want some. So we implemented like a bookworm mode where it actually gave you more bookmarks, so people could, you know, read it at their own pace a bit more. So other things, you know, in game books, there's a lot of things that we didn't need to worry about. Like for example, Fighting Fantasy books, again, they're traditionally known as having 400 sections. We're a digital platform, we don't need to worry about that anymore. So there's no section limitation. We can have as many sections as we want, which is awesome. And we have, you know, you don't actually have to have a physical dice, you have to write on a piece of paper anymore, so we can handle all that within the engine. And the other important thing here is that, you know, when these books first appeared in the 80s, the kind of consumer that was around then buying these books is very different to now. You know, there's been 25, 30 years since then. We've had the Lord of the Rings movies, we've got World of Warcraft, we've got all these things where, you know, the expectation of the consumer has gone up in terms of what they require. So the stories that we had to write had to have a little bit more of a mature, I mean, you still need giant rats, man, and still fighting, but there are slightly, you know, bigger themes in there which, you know, which we hope kind of appeal more to a modern audience. So one of the other very, very important things, and this was I was so passionate about this. Like, I love Fighting Fantasy, I love Lone Wolf, I love Choose Your Own Adventure. My dream was to be held up next to them. And I wanted people to, when they mentioned those titles, to mention us too. I want to be the best. I mean, we're in a niche here, we're not going to sell Angry Birds levels of copies of the game books. But I just want to be the best of what we were doing in this niche. And one of the things that's happened is that, I might be going on to another slide here, but I'll say it anyway, is that whenever you go to Touch Arcade or any of the big iOS websites, whenever interactive fiction on iOS devices is mentioned, Fighting Fantasy is quite rightly always mentioned, but we're always mentioned there too. And the way I kind of look at it is like, let's say, it's a bit of a bad analogy, but if we had somebody dressed from the 1920s walk up to us, and I said, is this person dressed from the 1920s, the 1930s, or the 1940s? It's so long ago, you probably wouldn't be able to, you probably wouldn't have a good guess at it, because the styles to us are quite similar, because it was such a long time ago. So in a way, my reckoning is, as I look 50 years in the future, it's going to be kind of like the same thing, I hope. I hope that Fighting Fantasy, Choose Your Own Adventure, and Gamebook Adventures are going to be mentioned in that kind of same thing. I think we're trying to get there with that. So important thing here. God, I've got a lot of slides, haven't I?
Yeah, this is your long bit.
So choosing a brand name is really, really important. So we came up with this really rubbish title, Guild of Gamebooks. What does that mean? What is a guild? What is a guild of gamebooks? What does that mean? And I had a bit of an epiphany moment when I went to the DDS summit here in Melbourne, and Rob Murray from Fireman was talking about flight control. And one of the big takeaways from that talk, he said to me, put the game in the title. Flight control, it says exactly what it is. So I kind of went back and I thought, well, what are we doing? We're doing adventure games. It's a game book. Hey, that's kind of easy. So, and it does exactly what it is. Even if you don't know what a game book is, even if you're coming at it new, you go, well, it's a game book. It's got adventures there, so you kind of know what you're going to get.
So, basically all that stuff that Neil was talking about, how like all the choices we made for game mechanics, game look, game feel, those were all based on us sitting down and saying, what's the brand, and how does this, and like all things like, what's the essence of a game book? Our brand is Gamebook Adventures, so our brand is having a good quality game book and having a good adventure. Obviously, brand has both names in the title. So even before we started, early in the prototypes, we started trying to think about how to use our brand name in a way that makes sense to help. So this is before we had our first app out, and we knew we were going to have more than one. We were going to have at least 6. We had 6 planned at the start. So our big question was, how do we build that brand? We have the name, we have this idea. How do we get that brand into people's consciousness? So Trail of the Assassin is the title of the first book, or was the title of the first book. And that doesn't do anything for our brand. So one of the first things we want to do is we thought, okay, each book is going to be a subset of our big brand. So the brand always has to come first. So we go ahead and we change the name of the book to Gamebook Adventures, Trail of the Assassin. That way, it implies there's more coming. It implies it's part of something bigger. And of course, it ties Gamebook Adventures to the book. But Neil had a brilliant idea early on that Trail of the Assassin is a fine title, it's lovely. It's got assassin in it, that's really what matters. Assassin, book about someone killing people. But all of our first 6 books were set in the same world, this world of Orlandes, which is not really part of the brand, but well, we kind of become synonymous, but we're growing out of it. Yeah. So the idea was to change the title so that we can actually have the title of the book even have more utility for us. So we changed the title to Gamebook Adventures and Assassin in Orlandes. It's our first book. It's our only book that has Orlandes in the title, which sets up the world that all the rest of the books are in. So those 2 small changes were really instrumental in sort of our first app getting out there, and people referring to our app as a Gamebook Adventure. Like if we just made Trail of the Assassin and had Gamebook Adventures be secondary, all the press and stuff we got from our first app wouldn't have necessarily, helped build our brand. But by putting Gamebook Adventures up front, people said, oh, there's going to be more of these. Gamebook Adventures, not adventure. And so that just sort of set that precedent in the press's mind. And so the next thing we did is on our icons, our first icon, number 1 up there, it had a 1 on it. Like, again, this implies there's more to come. This implies that this is part of a bigger thing. And our first 6 books, all, of course, as you can see, all had numbers in them. So it's like 1, 2, 3, this is like part of a series. All this stuff sort of helps to build this idea that they're all part of a contiguous brand, a contiguous product. So it's not just 1 book or 2 books. All 6 books are our product. We have more now, of course. So then the next question was, how do we use our logo in strategic ways in the apps? You don't want to like hit people over the head with logo placement everywhere, but you want it to be in there so people can remember it almost subliminally. So this is an example of the iPad version, and whenever, like Neil was saying, with the sort of black and white drawings before, whenever there's a blank spot on a page with text on it, we put in little black and white space figures. On the iPad, you can actually have full blank pages that you don't get on the iPhone. So on these full blank pages, we actually put in a little logo that's been sort of, this is for Spider Gods, it has this sort of like Incan Mayan thing going on around it. So it's not like in your face, it's just sort of there subtly. We also have it, so like this is the iPhone version. You have the Gamebook Adventures logo is sort of burned into the tabletop where you roll your dice. It's like when you're playing tabletop Dungeons & Dragons or your role-playing games, it always has all those little logos or all the little stuff and pieces. So that's, again, doing 2 things for us. It's helping build our brand. It's also helping keep the nostalgia of those sort of products you had when you were a kid. Like your character sheets, if you're playing Dungeons & Dragons, had the Dungeons & Dragons logo at the top. You know, so all that stuff is doing us two things. It's helping build our brand. Well, three things: helping build our brand, helping sort of increase the nostalgia value of our products, which then makes the game more fun for people. So, and also sort of the one on the right here, you can sort of see the GA logo is cleverly up in the window as well as on the post.
Okay, so one of the other things that we wanted to do, so we've got this. What's that? Okay, so we've got this this idea that we've got a book. I think the really important thing about books is that sometimes the writer of the books is just as important as the book. And I thought it was really important to include our contributors to the game book as kind of, you know, minor celebrities in their own right. And also, you know, having a whole film thing where you've got credits coming out. I wanted something like that. So this is the opening of the very first book here. So what we've done there is we've basically already planted these names in your head, and I can tell you right now, Perker Harvler, the second name on there, the illustrator, you wouldn't believe how many emails I get from people just saying, oh, I want to see more of Perker's work. He's actually become synonymous with some of our game books. And that was the same with Fighting Fantasy. A lot of the artists in Fighting Fantasy have been kind of held in high regard over the years. And if you're into D&D, the TSR years, your Jeff Eastleys and people like that, you know, they're names that roll off the tongue if you're in that kind of RPG space. So what was I talking about here?
This is sort of no number on the thing.
Oh yeah, that's right. So that's right. So basically, we've released our 7th book, and as you'll notice, there isn't a number in the corner, and you're like, well, surely Ben's just said that the number thing is quite important to the brand. What? And we're kind of doing a bit of an experiment at the minute, right? So think back to the recent Star Trek movie. Star Trek, what is it? 9, 10, 11, whatever it is. And they didn't even give it a name. They just said Star Trek. They didn't use the old fonts from the TV show. I mean, it's just Star Trek. It's a reboot. And because Temple of the Spider God was such we had a new engine coming in, and more importantly, we had a writer that had written for Fighting Fantasy, writing the game book for us. So I wanted to kind of reboot us. So we actually didn't put the number in the title, and we didn't put it on the icon. Whether that was a good move for our brand, we don't know. We can always chuck a number 7 in there later on. At the minute, it seems to be kind of working because our best sales are always book 1. So we're hoping that this reboot is kind of like another step. It's like a new beginning of this kind of brand building. So we're just going to show a quick promo video of the Temple of Spider God 2. So there's a little bit of a promo for that.
I just want to say something really quick about the color graph. So one thing you might notice in that is that all the images were colored, which is, again, Neil's like, hey, no, we're black and white, man, this is the way to go. And now we're like, color, no number, what the hell are they doing? So this is sort of what Jesse was talking about before. Our first 6 books really helped establish our brand, and now we can sort of start expanding our reach. And our customers, players, people who are fans, were sort of really wanted we're like, oh, color, you should be color blah. So we're like, oh yeah, you know, we'll try one in color, and we got really great response. So we sort of, our first 6 books being that classic look and classic feel was a perfect way to set up the brand. And now we're using that base to expand out. So our new book, Spider God, it has all color images, and it's like a lot more, you know, well, color. We're breaking a lot of the little rules that we had for the first 6 books because we're trying to sort of evolve our market and expand our brand.
Okay, so I've already covered a little bit of this already, but it's the whole being first to market thing. when Fighting Fantasy was announced by this company in Canada called Big Blue Bubble, I believe they're called, they're a company, they've got a big studio and they've got various people building their apps for them. So they were able to get Fighting Fantasy out before we were able to release Assassin Orlando's. And that kind of came out a good month before. But it was a really strange thing that happened in that I was a bit concerned, thinking, oh, we're just going to disappear because they've got the brand and we don't have a brand as yet. But it was kind of nice because people like Touch Arcade, all the websites, they kind of let us join on a little bit for the ride. And I think it even got to a point where sometimes I would email a press release to somebody like Touch Arcade, and they would feature us the next day, and actually then add Fighting Fantasy in to the actual article, and I was a bit annoyed because I kind of then got them a little bit more coverage as well, but it's all sort of swings and roundabouts. So again, I've already covered most of this, but it's basically about the knock-on effect and making sure that in 50 years' time that we're seen as part of this group of interactive fiction brands.
So getting the word out. This is sort of the part where I try to tell you things that you should do that may or may not apply to you. So take what you will. The idea here is that one thing that Neil does really well, and I try to help out with, is this idea that you have to be constantly selling your game. Selling your game is not a passive endeavor. Like I said early on, if you build it, they won't necessarily buy it. You have to be selling it. Finishing your game, releasing it, that's like step one of your journey. That's like opening your front door. Okay, you're not done. You haven't even hardly started yet. So I mean, it's hard to hear that because you're like, oh my gosh, I just spent 6 months and blood, sweat, and tears making this awesome game, and I finally got it out, and I can finally take a vacation. No, sorry, you're just starting. You have to go out. You have to be constantly engaging in the market, whether it be with social media or coming to conferences and talking about your game, speaks, talks, or whatever. You have to go and do stuff. So I mean, even as stupid things like I've been tweeting for the last 6 or 7 days, come to see our talk, which really only applies to whatever 50 people here, whatever people are here, almost more to make a point that you have to be constantly selling your product, constantly selling your game, and constantly selling your brand. It's not just we're not just pushing a single app. We're not just pushing Spider God. When we try to sell Spider God, we're like, hey, Gamebook Adventures, Spider God. The next Gamebook Adventures came out. Go check it out. Go check out Spider God. The next Gamebook Adventure. And all the stuff that we're trying to push and get out there, we're constantly talking about the brand in association with whichever app is out right now. Oh, like go to PAX.
Anyway. And just by selling yourself, you're not selling out. I think there's this perception that, I'm selling out, I'm becoming this thing, but you can do it in a lot more subtle ways. I use Twitter. If anybody follows me on Twitter, you'll see I talk about all sorts of rubbish.
Follow me on Twitter.
But one of the things that I've done, and this was purely by accident, was that because it's Tin Man Games, I am known as the Tin Man, and my wife is the Tin Wife, and we gave birth to a beautiful baby 20 months ago, and she is the Tin Baby. And recently she leveled up. She gained enough experience to become the Tin Toddler. So it's one of the things I think people are kind of identifying a little bit with me on it, and I kind of play with it a little bit, and I kind of post stuff up, and I talk about the tin. Fact, even my wife's got her own Twitter stream now, and her sort of detail is, the Tin White. She is the Tin White. It's bizarre. So yeah. So she's actually. I've got my wife marketing. It's terrible. Pardon? She's
yeah. So I mean, it's like when Neil's talking about Twitter, it's like he has this character on Twitter he basically plays. That's part of our brand identity. He's the Tin Man. We do Gamebook Adventures, and lots of our players sort of identify. Other things, blogs. Our blog isn't like a huge traffic generator for us. Mostly we use the blog as a way to do long form Twitter. Like we'll put blog posts up and then we'll tweet about it. People come to it because we basically push people to the blog from Twitter or from Facebook. But still, it's good to have these areas. This is sort of where you can directly engage with your players. People who are really interested in your product will come to your blog. They want to know more about you, more about your story, more about what you're talking about. So this is sort of where we put up stuff like this is all about, hey, we got a great thing on Spider God, whatever was up there when I took the screenshot. But we have other things like what we think about the industry, or we'll probably do a thing about this talk. How to do marketing, maybe put the slideshow up or whatever. So you got to have those things. And then we have another site, the Gamebook Adventures site, which is not as personal. I mean, we try to make it personal, but it's not like a direct. We're like, hey, we're in Adventures. This is sort of the shop window, as it were. This is how we sell our stuff. So when we say, hey, there's a new gamebook out, we'll push you to this site just because it has all the information. It's got the videos and whatnot. And we've also added some things just because our niche product, we have things like what is a Gamebook Adventure and a Gamebook Quick Start Guide. This basically says, if you've maybe heard of us, maybe you've played Dungeons & Dragons, but you don't know what a Gamebook is, but you've heard of us, you come to our site, you go, oh, what's a Gamebook Adventure? You click on that, it says, oh, this is what a Gamebook is, this is how you play it. It's just a really short intro. So we sort of understand that our product's very niche, and we have to help, educate the masses that we're looking at. So that's sort of what this is for. So all of these things are part of how you tell your story. So this is how you build your brand. You gotta get the word out, and you have to tell your story. So our story is, and I think Neil quoted me, was like an Englishman and an American walking to a bar. And that's like instead of for
that happens a lot.
And that's actually how I met Neil. He like sent me an email and was like, let's go meet at the bar and pint and talk about this thing. And that was basically how our story started. And Michael Woods from Media Saints, I don't know if he's here or not, but I know he's here. I know he's at the conference, but Neil and I did a sort of an interview series where we videotaped ourselves doing interviews about the iPad stuff for a promo. And Michael sort of pointed out that we have these sort of characters. Like I'm this sort of loud, fast-talking American, gets all excited about things, and Neil's a little bit more reserved. So he sort of said, be those characters, because when we're out and about trying to push our brand, it's just like being the Tin Man on Twitter. That's a character that Neil plays on Twitter, and then we can sort of we basically play ourselves, but slightly more amplified when we're out in public, because that helps give our brand a face. You have to be, this is part of the sort of be out there, go do stuff. You have to constantly be out there, talking to people, doing stuff, and you have to have a story to tell. So, our story might be more interesting than other people's, whatever, doesn't matter. Every game studio has a story to tell. Figure out what the interesting parts of your story are, and amplify those pieces. Figure out what your traits are, and amplify the interesting parts. Because journalists and your readers they want to hear a story. And if you're in your press releases and your blog posts and stuff, if you can say, hey, we're these British guy, an American guy who's got an Australian game company, like that's weird, And so that's kind of like a hook, and journalists like to write about stuff like that. So figure out what it is about your personal studio, your game company, whatever it is. Figure out what the interesting parts are and amplify those, and be sure to tell the journalists about that stuff. Like you always, our early press releases were all about sort of, here's our story, and then here's what we're doing, or here's what we're doing, and then here's our story, because they want to fill page inches, and if you give them interesting stories, then they'll promote your stuff. So, yes.
So, what is the future for our brand, for Gamebook Adventures? Well, our business model is the fact that we have to keep releasing more titles, so we could...
More books.
I don't understand what that means. But one of the other important things, and again, we're going back to what we might have heard this morning, it's reiterating, doing new stuff. We could sit in this little fantasy niche for the next 2 or 3 years and release more, but we're looking at other genres. So we've got a sci-fi book coming out in a few months' time. We've got, we're working with lots of kind of other teams to produce, like there's a potential kind of Call of Cthulhu-esque game book coming out. And so kind of looking at these new genres, we've also got a really cool kind of game book series, which is going to be kind of Twilight-esque.
But better. Funnier.
Yeah, don't tell the Tin Wife that. And the other important thing is to building this stable of stuff. I alluded to Jonathan Green writing Temple of the Spider God. Jonathan Green wrote 7 of the Fighting Fantasy books. He's kind of a well-known Fighting Fantasy author. And so to have him, he's now writing 2 other series with us. And people like Gary Chalk from Lone Wolf, the illustrator, to actually have those guys who, when I was a kid, when I was 10 years old, I had a Gary Chalk colouring book. I was sat there with felt tip pens colouring in his pictures, and now he's sending me emails with the letter going, Neil, what do you think? Do you like this shot? And I'm going, yeah. No, it's not bad. And the other thing is that we want to leverage our IP to other platforms, media. We're talking with role-playing game companies, actually making a role-playing game based on our fantasy world. That'd be kind of cool. And also, importantly, leveraging the technology. So trying to find ways, because we've spent an awful lot of money creating this wonderful technology. What can we do with it? And it doesn't just mean stuff that we publish. It might be that other people want to publish stuff using our technology, or it might be that we want to take our technology and create tools that you can sit at home and create interactive fiction with, and you buy, a tool from us to do that. And then the other important one, which I'm doing a lot of work at the moment into, is actually, chasing existing IP, going to people that have IP and saying, hi, we're doing this thing, your IP would work really well as a game book. And seeing what they say, and it's amazing how we've had really good response from that. So yeah, going back, see I'm always jumping the gun. So yeah, just going back to the brand magnetism here. So what's happened with this, with like Jonathan Green, Derek Chop, these guys are coming to us now. They can see that we're actually making quite important steps. Because all these guys, they've lived and breathed game books for the last 20, 30 years. And it's been a bit quiet during the back end of the 90s and into the early 2000s, and all of a sudden it's picking up again. And we're at the front of that little rise, and so they want to come and join us and write stuff, and you know, we're happy to have them. It's awesome. So yes, we've got a list of some of the people there, and obviously the list could go on, but we can't talk about those things at the moment because they're still in their infancy.
Except for one. So we've been pimping this big announcement, of course, and it's pretty exciting for us. We're really stoked. It's sort of like this is sort of the culmination of this whole talk of like all this brand building we did, creating our brand. You know, we wanted to, you know, get more reach and all this stuff. It's really good. So we're, you know, this is effectively like us taking our brand and leveraging it into sort of like new markets where, well, not a new market, but you know, it's all about. So anyway, sorry.
Oh. Well, yeah, I can talk about it. Yeah, I mean, it says exactly what it is. So basically, I approached the license holders of Judge Dredd. It's Rebellion company. So I don't know whether you know my story, but recently I moved back to the UK for a couple of years. I miss Melbourne.
Yeah.
But one of the things I did, I thought, like, I can't be depressed for too long. So I basically went out, got in touch with a load of contacts, and kind of just put myself in front of lots of different people that are IP holders in the UK, because I'm living there, I might as well do that. And Rebellion were great. I went and pitched the idea to them, and yeah, they were definitely interested. So we actually have the team working on this. So it's not just our normal group of contributors writing this. We've gone into a bit of a partnership with a team of writers and artists that actually produced the role-playing tabletop game. I think it came out a couple of years ago. It was the second edition of it. So they know the universe inside out. They know 2000 AD and
the artwork to me. Like this is one of the pieces of artwork that's going to be in the book. So.
Yeah.
The artwork the artist has made.
Yeah, that's all good. And follow us on Twitter and go to our website and
buy our game books.
Yeah.
Questions?
If anyone has any questions,
We didn't go.
we've got heaps of time, guys, so very handy.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, I just looked up on the App Store and you've got a light version that looks like you only recently released over the last few months.
Yeah, well, yeah, we had tools a couple months ago.
a few more.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a good question because the other thing that's weird about that is it doesn't have in-app purchase. It just goes, you get a link back to the App Store to buy another one. There's a couple reasons for that. One was we didn't have a light version early on, mostly because we didn't have time to do it, and we were a little worried that it might have weird brand censor, like it might like hurt our brand value. Because we have this we try to position ourselves like if our good game books are $5 on the App Store, which is on the App Store like $1 million, it seems like. And our competitors are about $3. So we try to keep our prices above theirs purposefully, to get that value sort of perception. And we were a little worried if we made a free book, just straight up, that it would hurt that. So we were a little early on. We were a little skeptical, but then we decided, right, we need to have a better way to get the word out. And so we made the light version pretty recently. And one of the reasons we did the not in-app purchase, but the link out was so that the people who it's kind of weird, but it's because we want to keep the brand. And the collectors want to have that icon with the 1 on it, you know. So if you get the light app and you upgrade, it still has the light on it, and that's kind of, it's not the quality we want. I mean, it's something stupid and simple, just the icon, but we want to keep the quality. Like if you get a Gamebook Adventure, we want you to have the Gamebook Adventure. So we want you to have the icon with the 1 on it in your little thing, you know. So that was one of the reasons. And the other one was to help keep the 1-star people on the light version, because some people, you know, it's a niche product. Some people are like, oh my God, reading, what the, you know. And they'll just 1-star you for no good reason. So that helps sort of weed out people who really want the book. And so then the reviews we get on the full version tend to be a little bit little bit better.
I'm just going to follow up with
Yeah.
question 3 questions to that. You've got Typical Spider got for $2.99. So is that to do with the reboot? Or is that a temporary sale?
That was a temporary sale thing, but it's something that I've carried on. Like, I was going to actually put it back to 4.99 before I flew out here, but I thought, you know, I'm just going to keep it going. And I'm doing a bit of an experiment to see how much these sales are going to get back over a longer period, and see whether that equates to more sales. Because I think you get that whole thing where you've got the tiers of pricing. So if somebody comes to the product and they see a slightly lower price game, we're going to go for that one. And that's our best one at the moment. That's the best. So we're trying to draw in a few more. So we'll see. It's a bit of an experiment.
Yeah, we've seen in the past where we've gone on sales for longer than a couple of days like we'll get a spike and then the sales tend to go back to the same sort of numbers as we had before, like, but we're making
That's
some
right.
money. So maybe Spider-God might break that trend.
Well, I think it is kind of break, but that's because it's that reboot thing. I think.
Yeah, it's a bit of critical mass too, because we're a niche product, you know, we can charge more, but we don't have as many sales. So it might be that Spider-God finally has critical mass to sort of where we can leave the $3 and still make the same like sales numbers.
It's really easy to relate what you've done to companies that produce episodic titles, so Telltale with their adventure games, Ruben McGowan. How would you relate branding to a company that doesn't release, maybe like the same idea of how to do a release or whatever?
Right.
You know what they think that branding is going to do?
Well, it's the first thing you have to do is decide what your brand is going to be. I mean, like if you listen to like Jesse at the EDAR talk, and even like Richard with BioWare, most people, I mean, like our hardcore gamers here know BioWare. We know who he's talking, but most people just know the name, like Dragon Age. That's the brand. You know, so oftentimes I think like Hacker guys and the Fireman guys, I think Real Racing is not the same brand as Flight Control. So those are almost their own brands, as it were. And you can have a brand that's effectively one game, and especially on the digital stuff, you can keep updating it, and that's sort of a way to keep your brand going. But I think like Pocket God is one of those like crazy ones that is one app that's been selling forever because you can update it every 2 weeks or something.
And if you have got a game where you're just doing one game, it's just your passion in that game, just suddenly sit down, take a step back from it, and look at it and go, wait there, can I do anything with that will help the brand as it were? You know, there's a guy who runs a company down the road that they're making a different kind of game, but my IP would work really well in that. Maybe I should have a chat to him and say, you know, should we do a 50-50 deal? You can use my, so you know, you're cross-promoting me, and we're looking to do that a lot at the moment too. So this, you know, it's just about.
Yeah, I think a lot of it sort of goes back to those 3 circles that we had there. It's not every game I think can be built into a brand. I think every game can be obviously sold and marketed, but at some point you have to go back to the start and go, right, I need to pick a game that I'm passionate about, a game that would be totally awesome, a game that I can make, a game that's marketable. And part of that marketable is a game or a series of games, or 3 or 4 games that may not be maybe totally different, but work together in some way that you can create your brand out of that. The boss.
Fine. Speaking of the niche market, and saying you're not going to sell as many Gamebooks and all those very marketable items, how big is the niche market, like, in if you're allowed to share figures?
Well, I don't want to share too many.
Because people, indie developers, if everyone's aiming for the niche market, everyone says aim for the niche market to go for big products, but you don't know how big the niche market is to compare.
True.
Well, I think so.
There's a way to test that. And like,
Well, yeah, I mean, so Neil sort of said earlier, like, Choose Your Adventure sold 200
million.
million trillion, something like whatever it was. So that's sort of part of the market.
I think with our niche market, the whole reason why we did fantasy, we could have done a game book, and we could have gone out there and done a game book based on something that not many people know about. But we didn't. We chose fantasy because it's an easy in, right? Because fantasy is very popular. It means that I can go to a role-playing game convention that traditionally are, you know, you've got BioWare there showing off Dragon Age, and you've got Wizards of the Coast showing off Dungeons and Dragons tabletop game, and then we can fit in. We sort of fit in the middle of that. So it's kind of, you know, choosing your in very carefully, I think, and just making sure that there are other ways that you can leverage that stuff.
Yeah. Also, just being because we're like there's 2 of us in the company that our burn rate's pretty low. You know, I mean, so we don't have to sell. You don't have to sell a whole lot of copies to pay yourselves. Obviously, you know, we spend money on. You're probably gonna find Neil here for the conference, and we spend money on packs. And so there's lots of expenses on top of our burn rate, or on top of our whatever salaries. But that's one of the great things about being an indie is that you're not that expensive compared to, say, a 50-person studio or a 10-person studio. You know, a 2-person studio can last a lot longer in a niche market. And that's sort of what we're doing. We're just saying, this is our market, we're going to be best in this market, we're going to build our brand on this market, and then we'll make enough money to pay ourselves, you know, and use money. Yeah?
So going back to like when you guys were first releasing your first book, you'd be in a situation where you were trying to get people to identify you, like your developer name, with a particular thing that you're doing that no one else is doing. How do you guys go about that? Because at the moment we're struggling with that very simple.
So are you talking about the name of your company or the name of your product? Because they're two different things. The name of the company.
Yeah.
You see, I don't care if nobody knows about Tin Man Games. Well, I do, of course, but that's the important thing is Gamebook Adventures. Gamebook Adventures everywhere. So I've got on my t-shirt here, my Ben's got on his t-shirt. We do have Tin Man t-shirts, but I prefer to wear this because this is what's going to make the dollar.
What people buy.
Yeah. So you know, if suddenly we changed our name to something else, sort of the scare, you know, the Cowboy Lion Games or something, that doesn't bother me so much. So I would aim more at the product, and less at your company. Unless your company is doing.
Is your product or whatever. Yeah, I mean, yeah. And it's, I think that sort of building on what he's saying, it's like, sit down with the team and your designers and go, right, what is it we're selling? What is our brand? You know, I mean, that might be your game, and then what are the things about that? And once you sort of understand what you're trying to sell and specifically who you're trying to sell to, like, I mean, our brand, Gamebook Adventures, almost has a market, you know, that's like almost saying, that's almost a demographic, you know? So once you understand who it is you're trying to sell to, it's a lot easier than find sites that those people are interested in, find journalists who are excited about that kind of thing, and then approach them.
Yeah.
Because you want to find fans in the media. So, you know, we're a niche market, but there's lots of people who love Gamebook Adventures. So we find there's like, I think Eli on Arcade he's like our biggest fan, you know? And we, not the other guys, we don't care about them. You know, we approach him because he's the game bookie guy, you know, he's an RPG guy. You know, so it's all about sort of figuring out what your brand is and who it is that you're trying to target. Once you understand who you're trying to target, who your game is for, then selling it becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, and that's why we go to PAX twice a year, and we choose PAX now because PAX is our perfect audience. It's that the gamers, and the tabletop gamers, video gamers, tabletop, and we're kind of in the middle of that.
Yeah.
Hope that answers the question. Okay.
Yes,
just back to the live version, how successful was it compared to the normal version? I mean, obviously it was free, so how much more downloads did you get on that?
Yeah, so the flurry metrics on that one, I think it's our light version's been out for 5 months, and the book one's been out for nearly 2 years. I think light version has some 4 or 5 times as many downloads, so it's some of the 50 or 60,000. No, it's a lot. Or sessions, let's say sessions, because flurry does sessions, not downloads. It's a little weird. So we had like something like 60,000 sessions on that, and we get a pretty good conversion rate. It's probably about 20% conversion rate. People who get the light version and then go ahead and buy it, which is really good. Like most conversion rates are like around 3%. People say. I think we ascribe that mostly to the fact that it is a very niche product. Our screenshots are like pages of text. You know, so most people who aren't interested in reading aren't going to get it, aren't going to download it. So I think people who download are people who are kind of planning to buy our books, and they go ahead and download it anyways to see what it is, and then they go ahead and buy it. So I think that's why we get such a high conversion rate. I'm not sure, I wouldn't expect such a high conversion rate on a different kind of game.
Yeah, I think people they actively look for us. You know, they want our kind of experience.
Yeah.
My question isn't so much about your branding at all, really. It's just a personal interest question.
We're awesome.
You guys were talking before about Lone Wolf, was it? That they were the first to enable you to continue your character throughout the series. I was wondering if Gamebook Adventures did that, and if not, if you planned on doing that.
We're not at the moment. The main reason we're not at the minute is we didn't want to marginalise people that couldn't buy book 3 because we were going to have to own book 1. Because we wanted basically every time we released, we wanted to get a new lot of people coming to our product. But now we've got that brand, now we're in place, and we can take a few more risks. And I'm actually in, I don't mind saying, I'm chatting with Jonathan Green in a minute about producing a kind of I think we're doing a 3-book series, which should be able to continue with characters.
I can have a question.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I've got a few observations and then a question for you. You guys are book publishers, you're not really technology.
We are.
Yeah. That was kind of surprising.
I think if you were inward Gamebook Adventures, you would sell a lot more copies, a huge amount more copies. So then you consider the idea of knocking on anyone's door, or those are the guys, and saying, hey, we have a great little niche product for you that you can make a lot of. Sometimes, I used to talk about this on strategy sessions, sometimes you've got a great idea, but it's not your idea to make money out of. So if you guys really make money out of this idea, it's a great idea, but maybe there's a whole lot of money to be made out of it, it's not yours.
We're just in that headspace at the moment, and we're in sort of discussions with various people. I mean, it's funny, book publishers, I think some of them seem a bit scared of us, because they're kind of, they've got all their own internal kind of thing going on, where they're trying to, do we go ebook, do we go, you know, how much do we go ebook, how much money do we put into the development, you know. So to then have us to come in and go, hey, we're not only ebook, but we're like a computer game ebook where you choose, and, you know, I think it might be a one step too far at the moment, but I think things are moving really quickly, and like, we're in discussion with a few people about things, so.
Yeah, I think they used to be idea of Kindle and so on.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, the thing is, like, the book, I mean, I've done some work in the book industry, writing stuff, and, like proper print books, and they're really, it's a really old industry, and they're very averse to change, and like, ebooks are just the word files, so they understand that. We're this new weird thing, and they were really skittish. It's kind of not good for them. Like, obviously, that's an industry that's in a huge amount of change right now, and they're trying to fight as much as they can. And like, we all probably have Kindles and ebooks, and that's great. But there's the industry out there is just really resistant to that change, and they see something like that, and they're like, oh! And so we're trying to find the right people to talk to, because there's people in those industries. Yeah, it's just finding those people and breaking down the barriers. It's a hard call.
I had an email conversation with a major book publisher, and they came back to me and basically said, oh, we can't work with you because you're now our competition. And that's a major book publisher that, like, yeah. Yeah. I can't afford them.
You don't want them.
Yeah.
I'm really fascinated by this Judge Dredd thing. Hopefully you'll get to the level where you can do Batman and other characters like that. But in terms of timing and marketing, something I'm focused on, would you try to release this when the new Judge Dredd movie comes out, or would you?
Before, yeah, it has to be out before the new movie, so we can ride that way. That's absolutely part of it.
Yeah. But we're not part, just to say, we're not part of the movie thing, because the movie thing's a whole separate.
No, that's what got me thinking with the tie-in. So like at the end of the book, now watch the movie, or
yeah, we can't actually do that contractually, but we're absolutely going to try to milk the crap out of that. I mean, we can't directly tie ourselves to the movie, but obviously there'll be lots of marketing, and we'll be like, hey, we're also here too, woo! So you know, we'll basically go to the edge of what we can do contractually to tie ourselves to, without tying ourselves to. Lost. What's up?
Basically with that, I think it was the James Cameron the Avatar game. He's crap, right? Actually bad. Except he said that in hindsight it should have sold then after the movie came out, not before. Have you guys done any research on that, saying maybe we should do it before or after? Or?
I think because Judge Dredd's like an established sort of narrative comic book, bookie, there's games, there's tons of stuff. We're not too worried about that. Like we more want to get there before them, so that we're there in the market, because we don't really have the marketing talk to say, hey, just saw the movie, come see us. It's more like we got to be there, so when people are looking for Judge Dredd, they'll find us. So.
All right, guys, everyone give them a great big round of applause.